The last sandwich my daughter ever gave away was supposed to be her dinner, but by morning, it had put the most dangerous man in Chicago on his knees. I did not know that yet. At 9:17 that night, I was still missing. My 7-year-old daughter, Emily Bennett, was sitting behind Miller's Diner on West Grand Avenue with her knees tucked inside her thin pink coat, holding a paper-wrapped turkey sandwich like it was something holy. I had made it for her before my evening shift. 2 slices of wheat bread, 1 slice of turkey, a little mustard, no tomatoes because she hated the way they made the bread wet. I had kissed the top of her head and told her I would be back before the streetlights started flickering. Then I broke that promise. Chicago in November does not forgive anyone. The wind came down the alley like it had teeth, rattling the trash cans, pulling steam from the sewer grates, turning every breath into a small ghost. Emily sat under the weak yellow bulb by the diner's back door, waiting for me because I had taught her to stay where I could find her. Not to wander, not to trust strangers, not to cry unless she was somewhere safe enough to be heard. She had already eaten half the sandwich. The other half stayed wrapped in her lap. She told me later she saved it because she thought I might be hungry when I came back. That is the part that still breaks me. My child was cold, scared, and alone, and she was thinking about me. Across the street, beneath the awning of a closed tailor shop, a man sat in the dark beside a black SUV. He was not homeless, not lost, not ordinary in any way. But Emily did not know that. She saw a man without an umbrella, without a smile, without anyone speaking to him. She saw his expensive black coat and polished shoes. But children do not measure loneliness by money. They measure it by silence. 2 men stood near the SUV, watching the block like they owned every shadow on it. One of them started forward when Emily crossed the street, but the seated man lifted one hand, and the whole world seemed to stop obeying everyone except him. Emily walked right up to him with her little sneakers splashing through dirty rainwater. She held out the wrapped sandwich. "You can have some," she said. The man looked at her for a long time. His face was sharp and pale under the streetlight, his dark hair damp from the rain, his eyes the color of storm clouds over Lake Michigan. "Why would you give me your food?" he asked. Emily shrugged, the way brave children do when they are trying not to tremble. "My mom says if somebody looks lonelier than you should share." Something changed in him then. Not much. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But Emily noticed. His hand closed around the sandwich, slowly, carefully, like it might fall apart if he held it too hard. "Where is your mother?" he asked. Emily looked back at the empty diner door, then at the street, then at the paper in her coat pocket where I had written one name I prayed she would never need to say. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know, but she told me if Calvin came back, I should run." Emily told me later that the man did not move for several seconds after she said Calvin's name. The rain kept ticking against the awning above him. His 2 men stopped looking at the street and started looking at her, as if a 7-year-old child in pink sneakers had just carried a secret heavier than anything in their world. The man folded the sandwich back into its paper and placed it carefully inside his coat pocket instead of eating it. "Calvin who?" he asked. His voice stayed quiet, but something in it made Emily take one small step backward. Not because he scared her, because the air around him had changed. "Calvin Ross," she whispered. "He used to come to our apartment. Mom said not to open the door for him anymore." One of the men beside the black SUV looked at the other. A silent message passed between them. The seated man saw it. Of course he did. Men like Adrian Whitmore did not miss things. Not rain on a sleeve. Not fear in a child's voice. Not the name of a man who should not have been anywhere near my daughter. "What is your name?" he asked her. "Emily." "Emily what?" She pressed her lips together. I had taught her not to give strangers her full name. Even then, even cold and alone, she remembered. The smallest pride touched his face, so faint it was almost not there. "Smart girl," he said. "Your mother taught you well." Emily looked down at her shoes. The left one had a loose strap. The right one was soaked through. "She said I should go to St. Luke's if she did not come back." "Then why are you still here?" "Because she said she would find me here first." That answer broke something open in him. He looked across the street at the diner, at the dark kitchen windows, at the locked back door where I should have returned 2 hours earlier. He did not ask if I was unreliable. He did not ask if I had abandoned her. He looked at the untouched half of a cheap sandwich in his pocket and understood what kind of mother leaves food before she leaves instructions. "Did your mother give you anything?" he asked. Emily hesitated. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out the folded paper I had written in the supply closet at Miller's Diner with shaking hands, right before Calvin appeared at the front window. Adrian took it without unfolding it too fast. I would learn later that this was one of his habits. He handled fragile things gently. Children, evidence, pain. The paper had 3 lines. St. Luke's Church, a phone number that no longer worked, and the sentence I had written because I had no better way to protect my child. Do not trust the police if Calvin is with them. Adrian read it once. Then again. His expression did not change, but one of his men muttered under his breath, "Boss." That was when Emily understood that the lonely man under the awning was not lonely because no one cared about him. He was lonely because everyone feared him. Adrian crouched until his eyes were level with hers. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. "Emily Bennett," he said softly, and she flinched because he knew her last name now. "I am going to ask you to do something brave. Are you taking me to my mom? I am going to find your mother. Tonight." He looked toward the end of the block, where headlights blurred through the rain like ghosts searching for a place to land. "Tonight." Emily told me she almost refused to get into the black SUV, not because the seats were leather, not because the windows were so dark they reflected the whole wet city back at her. She refused because the moment Adrian opened the rear door, she looked across the street at the diner again, and her little face crumpled. "What if Mom comes back and I am gone?" she asked. Adrian did not rush her. He did not order her inside. He stood in the rain beside that open door while traffic hissed past on West Grand Avenue, and his men watched the corners with their hands folded in front of them. "Then I will leave someone here for her," he said. "Someone she can trust?" Emily asked. That made him pause. Children have a way of asking questions adults spend years avoiding. Adrian looked at one of his men, a broad-shouldered man named Jonah with kind eyes and a scar near his ear that Emily noticed but never mentioned. "Jonah stays," Adrian said. "No one touches the diner. No one approaches the back door unless it is Grace Bennett." Jonah nodded once and crossed the street without complaint. Only then did Emily climb into the SUV. She sat on the edge of the seat with her backpack in her lap, too polite to lean back, too frightened to take up space. Adrian sat across from her, not beside her, as if he understood that safety sometimes meant distance. The inside of the vehicle smelled like rain, expensive leather, and peppermint. There was a small blue blanket folded near the armrest. Adrian offered it to her without a word. Emily took it with both hands. "Are you a police officer?" she asked. "No, are you a bad man?" The driver went still. The man in the passenger seat stopped breathing for a second. Adrian looked at my daughter, and for the first time that night, he almost smiled. "I have done bad things," he said, "but not to children." Emily studied him with the seriousness only a child can have when deciding whether the world is still worth trusting. "My mom says people are not one thing forever." His eyes shifted to the rain outside. "Your mother sounds wise." "She is tired," Emily said, "but she still sings when the sink leaks, so I do not get scared." That was when Adrian turned his face away. I was not there, but I know exactly why. Because grief recognizes love before the mind can name it. Because men like him are trained to survive betrayal, not kindness. The SUV pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent, while Jonah remained beneath the diner light like a promise in a dark coat. Adrian opened the folded paper again and read my warning one more time. Then he took out his phone. He did not raise his voice. He did not sound angry. That made it worse. "Find Calvin Ross," he said. "Start with traffic cameras within 5 blocks of Miller's Diner. Check motels, bus stations, emergency rooms, and St. Luke's. I want Grace Bennett found before midnight." Emily tightened her fingers around the blanket. "What happens at midnight?" Adrian looked at the half sandwich in his coat pocket, then back at her. "That is when people who hide in my city learn there are still doors they cannot lock." While my daughter rode through the rain in the back of Adrian Whitmore's SUV, I was 12 miles away in a room that smelled like bleach, old coffee, and wet concrete. I did not know where I was. I only knew there were no windows, only a narrow strip of light under a metal door and the steady drip of water somewhere behind the wall. My wrists ached from being held too tightly earlier, but I was not badly hurt. Calvin Ross had made sure of that. He always liked people frightened, not broken. Frightened people could still answer questions. Frightened people could still hand over what he wanted. "Where is it, Grace?" he had asked me again and again. pacing in front of me with his nice shoes and his fake, gentle voice. The same voice he used when he first came into Miller's Diner months earlier, smiling at Emily like he was a man who understood single mothers and late rent and overdue electric bills. I had believed him for almost 2 weeks. That was all. 2 weeks was enough for him to learn my schedule, my daughter's name, and the way I always kept emergency cash folded behind my employee badge. It was also enough for me to learn that his kindness had corners. Sharp ones. I had not meant to find the flash drive. It had fallen from his coat pocket near booth 6 while he argued with a man I had never seen before. Small. Black. No label. I picked it up because servers pick up everything people drop. Credit cards. Wedding rings. Receipts. Secrets. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I kept it because the man with Calvin had said one sentence that turned my blood cold. Whitmore cannot know his sister was not an accident. At the time, the name meant nothing to me. Adrian Whitmore was a rumor in Chicago, the kind of name people lowered their voices around. But sister, accident, those words stayed with me. I hid the flash drive in the hem of Emily's old winter hat, the purple one she refused to wear because it made her forehead itch. Calvin searched my purse, my coat, my locker at the diner. He never thought to search a child's hat stuffed in a bag of outgrown clothes. That was the only smart thing I had done all night. The rest was fear. I kept seeing Emily under the diner light. Her pink coat, her loose sneaker strap, her little face trying to be brave because I had made bravery sound like a game. Calvin stopped pacing and crouched in front of me. "You have until midnight," he said softly. Then I stopped being patient. I looked at the clock on the wall. 11:23. 37 minutes. I closed my eyes and prayed my daughter had eaten the sandwich. I prayed she had gone to St. Luke's. I prayed no stranger had found her. Then, somewhere beyond the door, a phone rang. Once. Twice. Calvin answered it, and for the first time that night, I watched the color drain from his face. Calvin stared at his phone like the screen had reached through his hand and touched something he kept hidden. He did not speak for a moment. He only listened. The room seemed to shrink around us, the drip behind the wall growing louder, the clock above the door clicking toward midnight with cruel little teeth. "That is impossible," he said finally, but his voice had changed. The fake softness was gone. Underneath, it was fear. Real fear. The kind people like Calvin usually tried to put in other people. I lifted my head. My mouth was dry. My heartbeat was everywhere. In my throat. In my ribs. In the tips of my fingers. I could not hear the voice on the other end of the call, but I heard enough in Calvin's silence to understand one thing. Something had gone wrong for him. He ended the call slowly, then turned toward me with eyes that no longer looked patient. "Who did you tell?" he asked. "No one." "Do not lie to me, Grace." I did not tell anyone. That was true. I had not told a soul. I had only written a warning for my daughter and prayed it would be enough. Calvin stepped closer, then stopped before touching me, as if even he understood there were lines he could not cross tonight without losing control of the story he had built. "Someone is asking questions," he said. "The wrong someone." I thought of Emily. My stomach dropped so hard I nearly could not breathe. "Where is my daughter?" His jaw tightened. Not guilt. Annoyance. As if my child were an inconvenience in a much larger problem. "Safe, if you cooperate." That is not an answer. He laughed once, but it came out thin. "You should worry about yourself." That was when I stopped being afraid in the way he wanted. Fear is strange. At first, it makes you small. Then, if someone threatens your child, it burns everything weak out of you. I sat straighter. My hands shook, but my voice did not. "If anything happens to Emily, whatever is on that flash drive becomes the least of your problems." Calvin looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not the tired waitress. Not the single mother counting tips under fluorescent lights. Not the woman who apologized when customers blamed her for cold coffee. A mother. A mother is not powerless. A mother is a locked door with a fire behind it. Across Chicago, I would later learn, Adrian Whitmore was opening every door Calvin thought he had locked. At 11:28, one of Adrian's men found security footage from the diner alley. At 11:31, another traced Calvin's gray sedan heading south on Halstead Street. At 11:36, Jonah called from Miller's Diner to say a woman matching my description had been seen arguing near the back entrance before being pushed into the passenger seat of that same car. He did not say it in front of Emily. Adrian had ordered them not to let my daughter hear anything that would make her picture the worst. Instead, Emily sat in a warm kitchen inside Adrian's safe house, wrapped in the blue blanket, staring at a bowl of chicken noodle soup she had barely touched. The housekeeper, Mrs. Vale, tried to coax her with crackers. Emily only shook her head and whispered, "I saved some for Mom." Adrian stood in the doorway, holding the silver box where he had placed the half sandwich. He looked at that child, at the soup, at the tiny shoes drying by the heater, and something old moved behind his eyes. "She will eat with her mother," he said. Then his phone buzzed. He read the message once. His face became still. "We found the car." The car was found behind a closed laundromat on South Halstead, parked crooked beneath a broken street lamp, with rainwater pooling around its tires. Empty. That was the first word Adrian heard. Empty car. Driver door unlocked. Passenger seat damp. No purse. No phone. No Grace Bennett. He stood in the safe house hallway while the message glowed on his screen, and for 1 second, the whole house became too quiet. Mrs. Vale stopped moving in the kitchen. The guard by the front window lowered his voice into his radio. Emily looked up from her soup because children hear fear even when adults try to hide it. "Did you find Mom?" she asked. Adrian slipped the phone into his coat pocket before she could see his face. "We found where she was," he said. Emily held the spoon with both hands. "Is that good?" He walked into the kitchen and crouched in front of her, the way he had done under the awning, making himself smaller without making himself weak. "It means we are closer. But not there yet. Not yet." Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard, fighting every tear like she thought tears might slow him down. "Mom says when you are lost, you should look for light." Adrian looked at Mrs. Vale. "Light?" Emily nodded. "She says people leave light behind. A receipt. A window. A person who saw something. You just have to keep looking." For the first time in years, Adrian Whitmore looked like a man taking orders from a child. He stood, took out his phone, and said, "Search every light within 2 blocks of that car. Gas stations, porch cameras, bus stops, churches, anything with a lens, a register, or a person who was awake." Then he turned toward the door. Emily slid off the chair so fast the blanket fell from her shoulders. "I am coming." No, the word came out too sharp. Her chin trembled. Adrian softened his voice, and somehow that was more powerful. "Your mother trusted you to stay alive. That is your job tonight. Mine is to bring her back." Emily stared at him, then reached into the pocket of her coat hanging by the heater. She pulled out the purple winter hat I had packed months ago and hated myself for forgetting. "Take this," she said. "It is Mom's emergency hat. She says ugly things are harder to lose." Adrian accepted it because he was smart enough not to laugh at a sacred object. The moment his fingers closed around the folded knit fabric, something small and hard shifted inside the hem. He felt it. Emily did not. Mrs. Vale did not. But Adrian did. His expression changed so slightly that only the guard by the window noticed. He unfolded the hat with care and found the black flash drive hidden in the stitched seam. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Rain tapped the kitchen window. The soup steamed untouched on the table. Emily looked from the hat to Adrian's face. "Is that bad?" she whispered. Adrian looked at the tiny piece of plastic in his palm, the thing Calvin had torn apart a city block trying to find, the thing I had hidden inside the ugliest hat my daughter owned. His voice dropped low. "No, Emily." He closed his hand around it. "This is why your mother is still alive." Adrian did not open the flash drive in front of Emily. He placed it inside his inner coat pocket with the same care he had used for the sandwich, then looked at Mrs. Vale. "Keep her away from every screen in this house," he said. "Cartoons only. Nothing with the news." Emily frowned. "I am not a baby." "No," Adrian said, and his voice gentled. "You are the bravest person in this room. That is why I need you to rest before your mother comes home." She wanted to argue. I know she did. My Emily could argue with a parking meter if she thought it had been unfair. But exhaustion finally pulled at her harder than fear. She climbed back into the chair, wrapped herself in the blue blanket, and whispered, "Tell Mom I waited." Adrian paused at the doorway. "I will tell her you led me to her." He left before she could see what those words cost him. In the back office of the safe house, his men set up an old laptop that had never touched the internet, the kind used for things nobody wanted traced. The flash drive loaded slowly. One folder appeared, then another. Bank transfers, names, dates, photographs of signed papers, audio files. Adrian stood behind the chair without sitting, his face reflected in the black window beside him, unreadable except for his eyes. They sharpened with every file that opened. Calvin Ross had not acted alone. He had been selling information, moving money through shell companies, carrying messages between people who smiled at Adrian across dinner tables and planned his fall before dessert. But none of that made Adrian go still. It was the final folder, the one labeled with a date from 12 years earlier. The date his younger sister, Clara Whitmore, died on an icy road outside Milwaukee. Everyone in Chicago had heard that story as a tragedy. Bad weather, bad timing, a family wound that turned a quiet young man into something colder. Adrian clicked once. A scanned repair invoice appeared. Break lines. Tampering suspected. Report never filed. A second document followed. A payment record. Then a name signed at the bottom of a private agreement. Elegant and familiar. Victor Hale. Adrian's right hand. His trusted advisor. The man who had stood beside him at Clara's funeral. The room did not explode. Men like Adrian did not need noise to become dangerous. The silence was enough. His hand rested on the back of the chair until his knuckles turned white. One of his men, Marcus, whispered, "Boss, Victor told us to stop looking south. He said the girl was a distraction." Adrian closed the laptop. "Call him. Here. No. Tell him I found the mother. Tell him I am bringing her to the warehouse on Cermak to trade for the drive." Marcus looked confused for half a second. Then he understood. "But we do not have her. Yet." Adrian turned toward the rain-dark window. Somewhere in the city, I was counting minutes on a wall clock and praying for my daughter. Somewhere close, Victor Hale was about to prove whether betrayal had a voice. "We do not need Grace to set the trap," Adrian said. "We need the person who is afraid she can speak." At 11:42, Calvin's phone rang again, and this time he did not answer it in front of me. He stepped into the hall and pulled the metal door halfway closed, but not far enough. Fear makes people careless. So does pride. His voice came through the gap in sharp pieces. "No, she does not have it." A pause. "Because I searched her." Another pause, longer this time. "Then the kid has it." My chest tightened so suddenly I could not breathe. Emily. He knew about Emily. I pulled against the chair without thinking, not because I believed I could get free, but because my body had become a mother before it remembered it was trapped. The door opened again. Calvin looked at me, and whatever patience he had been pretending to have was gone. "Your daughter is becoming a problem." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "She is 7 years old. Then you should have kept her out of this." That almost made me laugh. Not because anything was funny, but because men like Calvin always believed women carried storms into their own homes. As if I had invited him in. As if I had asked for secrets to fall at my feet beside dirty coffee cups and unpaid tips. "I did," I said. "I kept her away from you." He took one step closer, then his phone buzzed with a message. He read it, and the anger drained into confusion, then confusion into panic. I saw it happen. His face went blank. His fingers tightened around the phone. "We are moving," he said. Across town, Adrian's trap had begun to close without a single raised voice. Victor Hale had taken the bait faster than anyone expected. The moment Marcus told him Adrian had found me and planned to trade me for the drive at the warehouse on Cermak Road, Victor called Calvin from a private number and ordered him to bring me there. He did not ask if Calvin had the drive. He did not ask if the child was safe. He asked only one thing. "Does Whitmore know what is on it?" Adrian listened to every word from the back seat of his SUV, the city sliding past in streaks of rain and red brake lights. His face was calm, too calm. Beside him, Marcus held a tablet showing a map of Chicago, little blue dots moving towards Cermak from every direction. No sirens, no chaos, just quiet pressure. The kind that makes guilty men run exactly where you need them to go. "Victor is coming himself," Marcus said. Adrian looked down at the silver box resting on his lap. Inside was the half sandwich Emily had saved for me, wrapped like evidence of a world cleaner than his own. "Of course he is," Adrian said. "He wants to see the truth buried twice." Calvin pulled me from the chair and guided me down a narrow hallway. He did not hurt me, but his grip told me he had stopped pretending this was a conversation. Outside, the rain hit my face cold and hard. For one beautiful second, I could smell the city again. Wet asphalt, gasoline, distant lake wind, freedom close enough to ache. Then I saw the gray sedan waiting under the loading dock light. "Where are we going?" I asked. Calvin opened the passenger door. To trade you for your daughter's mistake. I thought of Emily's little hands giving away her dinner to a stranger because she thought he looked lonely. I thought of the ugly purple hat. I thought of the warning note in her pocket. And for the first time that night, I stopped praying for someone kind to find her. I started praying that the lonely man under the awning was exactly as dangerous as Calvin feared. The drive to Cermak Road took 17 minutes, but it felt like a year measured in raindrops. Calvin kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other on his phone, reading messages at every red light with the desperate focus of a man watching the floor disappear beneath him. I sat beside him with my hands folded in my lap because panic had become useless. I had spent the first hour of that night imagining every terrible thing that could happen. By the time we crossed under the train tracks near the river, my fear had narrowed into one clear shape. Emily had to live. Everything else could be negotiated with God later. The warehouse appeared at the end of a dead street, a long brick building with boarded windows and a single yellow security light swinging above the loading bay. Rain streaked across the windshield. The place looked abandoned, but not empty. I could feel eyes on it. Calvin could too. His breathing changed. He parked near the side entrance and grabbed my arm, not hard enough to leave a mark, just firm enough to remind me that he still believed control was something you could hold in your hand. Do exactly what I say, he muttered. If you care about your daughter, you will stay quiet. I looked at him then, really looked. The expensive haircut, the damp collar, the face of a man who had mistaken fear for loyalty his entire life. You never understood mothers, I said. We stay quiet only until our children are safe. The side door opened before he could answer. Warm light spilled across the wet pavement. A man stood inside, tall, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal coat that looked too clean for a place like that. I recognized him from Calvin's phone, from the way Calvin suddenly straightened like a boy caught stealing. Victor Hale. He did not look at me first. He looked past me, into the rain, searching for Adrian Whitmore. Where is the drive? Victor asked. The kid had it, Calvin said quickly. But Whitmore has her now. Victor's face tightened for half a second. There it was. The truth slipping out through the smallest crack. He knew about my daughter. He knew about the drive. He knew exactly why I had been taken. Then you brought the mother for nothing, Victor said. My stomach turned cold. Not because of the words, but because of how easily he said them. Like I was a misplaced package. Like Emily was a problem to be filed away. Calvin shifted beside me. You told me he wanted a trade. Victor looked at him with quiet disgust. I told you to clean up your mistake. A car door closed somewhere behind us. Soft. Controlled. The kind of sound that made both men freeze. Then another. Then another. Headlights came on around the warehouse, one by one, not blinding, just revealing. Black SUVs lined the dead street like they had risen out of the rain itself. No shouting. No chaos. Just presence. Then Adrian stepped into the security light, his dark coat moving in the wind, his face pale and calm and terrible in its stillness. In one hand, he carried the silver box. In the other, nothing at all. He looked at Victor first. Not Calvin. Not me. Victor. 12 years, Adrian said. His voice was low enough that the rain almost swallowed it. You stood beside me for 12 years. Victor did not deny it. That frightened me more than any confession could have. Adrian opened the silver box and took out the folded paper wrapping from Emily's sandwich. A child gave me this tonight, he said. She thought I was hungry. Then his eyes moved to me, and for the first time, the most feared man in Chicago looked almost human. Grace Bennett, he said gently. Emily sent me. For a second, I could not move. My name in Adrian Whitmore's mouth sounded impossible, like a locked door opening from the other side. Emily sent me. Those 3 words hit harder than fear, harder than rain, harder than every cruel minute I had spent counting the clock in that windowless room. My daughter was alive. My daughter was with him. My knees nearly gave out, but I held myself upright because Calvin was still beside me and Victor Hale was still watching every breath I took. Adrian saw the moment I understood. He gave me the smallest nod, not warm, not gentle exactly, but steady enough to stand on. She is safe, he said. I closed my eyes once. Only once. If I let myself feel all of it, I would fall apart right there on the wet pavement. Calvin's grip loosened, not out of kindness, but because he had started to realize the street no longer belonged to him. The black SUVs were positioned at every exit. Men stood in the rain without rushing, without shouting, without needing to prove anything. Their silence made the warehouse feel smaller. Victor looked at Adrian with the tired irritation of a man whose plan had been interrupted, not ruined. "This is sentimental," he said. "Even for you." Adrian did not answer him. He looked at Calvin. "Step away from her." Calvin swallowed. His eyes darted toward Victor, waiting for permission, for rescue, for any sign that he was still useful. Victor gave him nothing. That was when Calvin finally understood he had never been a partner, only a tool with fingerprints. He stepped back from me. The cold air rushed between us. I walked toward Adrian slowly, each step through the rain feeling unreal, like my body had left the room before my mind caught up. One of his men moved to offer me a coat, but Adrian lifted a hand, and the man stopped. Adrian took off his own black coat and placed it around my shoulders without touching more than the fabric. It was heavy, warm, and smelled faintly of rain and peppermint. "Emily has your hat," he said. My breath caught. "The purple one." She said ugly things are harder to lose. A broken laugh escaped me, small and shaky and almost painful. For 1 second, I was not standing between criminals and secrets. I was just a mother hearing that her child still sounded like herself. Then Victor spoke. "You do realize what she found means nothing without context." Adrian turned to him. The warmth vanished from his face. "I have context." Victor's jaw tightened. "You have files you do not understand. I have a repair invoice, a payment trail, a private agreement with your signature." Rain slipped down Adrian's temple, but he did not blink. "I have 12 years of loyalty explained in one folder." The words changed the air. Even Calvin looked at Victor then, startled by the size of the truth he had been carrying without understanding it. Victor's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, he looked older. Not guilty, not sorry, just caught. "Your sister was going to destroy everything your father built," Victor said quietly. "She wanted out." Adrian's face did not move, but I felt the pain in him like a pressure change before a storm. She was 22. She was dangerous. She was my sister. The street went silent except for the rain. I looked at the silver box in Adrian's hand, at the paper wrapping from Emily's sandwich tucked inside, and I understood something that frightened me more than his power. This man could have come here for revenge. Instead, he had come first to return a mother to her child. Adrian looked at Marcus. "Make the calls. Every file goes where it needs to go. Tonight." Victor stared at him. "You would expose all of this." Adrian's eyes found mine for one brief second, then returned to Victor. A hungry child reminded me what powerful men are supposed to protect. By the time we left Cermak Road, the rain had softened into a silver mist, the kind that made Chicago look almost gentle if you did not know what hid behind its windows. Victor Hale did not chase us. Calvin did not call my name. I never saw either man again that night. Adrian's people handled the rest with quiet efficiency, the way hospitals handle emergencies behind closed curtains, moving fast so the patient does not see how close everything came to ending. No shouting, no spectacle, just phones lighting up, engines turning over, files traveling to places where they could not be buried anymore. I sat in the back of Adrian's SUV with his coat around my shoulders and my hands wrapped around the silver box on my lap. He had given it to me without explanation. When I opened it, I found the sandwich half Emily had saved, still wrapped in paper, protected like it was worth more than diamonds. That was when I cried. Not loudly, not beautifully, just silently, with my face turned toward the dark window, so no one would feel forced to comfort me. Adrian sat across from me, giving me the dignity of not being watched. The city passed in broken reflections. Gas stations, closed bakeries, apartment windows glowing blue from late-night television. Ordinary things. The kind of things I thought I might never see again. "She waited for you," Adrian said after several minutes. His voice was low, careful. "She tried not to eat until you came back." I pressed my fingers to my mouth. "That sounds like her. She is stubborn. She gets that from me." For the first time, something almost warm moved across his face. Not a smile exactly, more like the memory of one. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and whatever softness had appeared was gone. "The files are out," he said. "To who?" "People who can no longer pretend they do not know." I wanted to ask what that meant. I wanted to ask whether the world worked that way when men like Victor had money, lawyers, friends in high offices, and 12 years of practice hiding the truth. But exhaustion had settled into my bones. I had no strength left for systems. Only for my child. Is Emily really safe? Adrian looked at me then, fully. Yes. One word. No decoration. No promise too pretty to believe. Just yes. And somehow, coming from him, it sounded like a wall built around her. When the SUV turned onto a quiet tree-lined street near Lincoln Park, I saw the safe house for the first time. It did not look like a fortress. It looked like a family home that had forgotten how to be one. Warm porch light, white trim, a maple tree shedding wet leaves onto the walkway. Before the vehicle fully stopped, the front door opened. Mrs. Vale appeared first, holding the blue blanket. Then Emily slipped past her, barefoot, hair messy, face pale with waiting. For half a second, she did not move. Neither did I. We just stared at each other through the rain-spotted glass, both afraid the other might disappear if we reached too fast. Then Adrian opened the door. Go, he said. I ran. I crossed the wet walkway so fast I nearly slipped. But Emily was already moving too, small bare feet on cold porch boards, blue blanket dragging behind her like a cape. The moment she hit my arms, the world came apart quietly. No thunder, no music, no miracle light. Just my daughter's face pressed into my neck and her little hands gripping the back of Adrian's coat around my shoulders as if she could keep me from ever disappearing again. Mom, she kept saying. Not crying at first, just saying it over and over, testing the word, making sure it still belonged to someone who could answer. I am here, I whispered into her hair. I am here, baby. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. She pulled back just far enough to inspect my face with both palms on my cheeks, the way I used to do when she had a fever. Her eyes moved over me, searching for proof I was whole. Did you eat? She asked. That broke me more than fear ever had. I laughed and cried at the same time, ugly and breathless, because of course that was what she wanted to know. Not where I had been, not why the night had turned into something from a nightmare. Did you eat? I opened the silver box with shaking fingers and showed her the wrapped half sandwich. I was waiting for you. Her mouth trembled. It is probably soggy. It is perfect. We sat right there on the porch steps under the warm light, rain misting around us, and shared that ruined sandwich like it was Thanksgiving dinner. Mrs. Vale stood in the doorway, wiping her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. The guards looked away because good men, even dangerous ones, know when a moment is not theirs to watch. Adrian stayed near the SUV, half in shadow, his white shirt damp at the collar, his hands empty at his sides. He did not step closer. He did not claim credit. He did not turn our reunion into a debt. That was the first thing about him that confused me. Power usually wants witnesses. Adrian Whitmore seemed almost ashamed to be thanked. When Emily finished her bite, she waved him over with the authority of a child who had decided he belonged somewhere. Mr. Adrian, she called. He looked startled. I do not think many people used his name that way. Softly, without fear. He came to the bottom of the steps, stopping a careful distance away. Emily leaned against my side, suddenly shy again. You found her. Adrian looked at me, then at my daughter. You helped. Because of the hat. Because of everything. Emily considered that. You can keep the sandwich box. His face changed, just a little. Are you sure? Yes. But only if you use it for important things. He accepted the command with a solemn nod. I will. I looked at him then, really looked, past the reputation, past the black SUVs, past the city's whispered fear. I saw a man standing in the rain with a child's trust in one hand and his sister's truth in the other. And I understood that saving us had cost him something invisible. I do not have money to repay you, I said. His eyes held mine, calm and unreadable. Your daughter already paid me. With half a sandwich? With proof that someone in this city still gives before the world teaches them not to. Emily yawned against my arm, her body finally believing it was allowed to be tired. I pulled her closer. Adrian looked toward the dark street, where dawn had not yet arrived, but the night had started losing its grip. Grace, he said quietly, the people who took you will not come near you again. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. But I had seen enough that night to know danger did not vanish just because one powerful man said so. It changed shape. It waited. And when Adrian's phone rang again, his face told me the night was not finished with us yet. Adrian let the phone ring twice before answering. And in those 2 seconds, every warm thing on that porch seemed to hold its breath. Emily had fallen heavy against my side, half asleep, Her fingers still curled around my sleeve like she was afraid dreams might separate us again. Mrs. Vale stepped closer, ready to take her inside. But I could not let go yet. Not after the night we had survived. Adrian turned slightly away, not enough to hide his face, only enough to give the call its own shadow. He listened. He did not speak for a long time. The mist gathered on his dark hair. The porch light made his profile look carved from grief. Then he said, "Send it to every paper by morning. All of it. No edits." My stomach tightened. When he ended the call, the silence after it felt heavier than the ringing had. "What happened?" I asked. Adrian slipped the phone into his pocket. "Victor is trying to make you responsible." I stared at him. "For what?" "For the files. For the money trail. For stealing information you never understood." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. "I was serving coffee 6 hours ago." "I know." His voice was steady. "By sunrise, everyone else will know too." The way he said it made me realize he was not only protecting us from Calvin, or Victor, or whatever remained of their circle. He was protecting the truth from being rewritten by men who had practiced rewriting women into footnotes. Emily stirred against me. "Mom." I bent over her quickly. "I am here. Do we have to run again?" The question was small, sleepy, devastating. I looked at Adrian before I could stop myself. He looked at my daughter, then at the empty street beyond the gate. "No," he said. "Not tonight." Emily blinked at him. "Promise." A man like Adrian Whitmore probably knew better than to make promises. The city had taught him the cost of every word. But he stepped closer, just enough for the porch light to reach his eyes. "I promise you will not be alone." That was not the same thing. It was wiser. It was honest. And somehow it comforted her more. Mrs. Vale finally carried Emily inside, wrapped in the blue blanket, murmuring about warm socks and hot chocolate. I watched until the door closed behind them. Then I stood on the porch with Adrian's coat still around my shoulders and the ruined taste of turkey and mustard still on my tongue. "Your sister," I said softly. His face changed, not much, but enough. "Clara, I am sorry." He looked down at the silver box in his hand, the one Emily had given him for important things. "For 12 years, I thought power meant making people afraid to lie to me." His voice was quiet. A 7-year-old child proved I was wrong. "What does it mean now?" He looked through the front window, where Emily's small silhouette moved past the curtain in Mrs. Vale's arms. "It means making sure the people who tell the truth are not left standing alone in the rain." Dawn came slowly after that, gray first, then pale gold touching the wet maple leaves, the parked SUVs, the steps where my daughter and I had shared the last food we owned. By 6 in the morning, the story was everywhere. Not my name, not Emily's face. Adrian had made sure of that. Only the documents, the signatures, the buried report, the proof that some secrets are not destroyed by force, but by one tired mother who picked up the wrong thing and one hungry child who gave away the last thing she had. Weeks later, Emily asked me if Mr. Adrian was a good man. I told her the truth. "I think he is trying to become one." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Children understand redemption better than adults. They do not ask who you were before the ring. They only watch what you do when someone is cold, hungry, and waiting to be found.